Hi everyone, this is Real World Audio, and we are continuing our masterclass series about active versus passive crossovers. This is part 6, so which is about the potential of either of them. So let's have a look at that. For an introduction, as I have been accused of being kind of like an audio philosopher, so now I'm throwing in a little bit of mentat wisdom for you from Dune, and I think everyone is preparing for the new version of Dune, which is being released soon. I don't know what to expect from it. I don't think anything can come close to the David Lynch version, but here we go. If you know about Frank Herbert and Dune, you will appreciate it. If not, then in Frank Herbert's world, there are these guys called mentats, and mentats are basically human computers, because in the future there were problems with machines, and as a consequence machines got banned because they almost ended human civilization. And by the way, that's a really oversimplification, because it was not the machines that ended when you look at it. It's just the dogma in the future, just like waving hands in front of the masses. But it was those people who were granted almost eternal life by machines, so they traded their bodies for machine bodies, but they were human brains inside machine bodies controlling the world of computers, which used humankind as slaves. So that situation was ended, and the happy future or unhappy future, far future, used these guys like Mentat Tufir Hawat to solve problems instead of using supercomputers. And basically I am talking about mentats because when you are dealing with audio, the proper mind frame to work on solutions is think yourself as a mentat, put yourself in that mind frame, that you are capable of reasoning, you are capable of using logic. You first of all examine the facts, you examine the premises, you examine how the facts depend on each other, which fact influences which other fact, and then you make your choices and your decisions based on the knowledge of the terrain. And in using that mindset, you can make anything work, and everything depends on the application. Adapt your audio gear to your purposes. And one more piece of wisdom is that, quoting directly from Frank Herbert, facts are fragile. A mentat can get tangled in them. Too much reliable data. And that's a problem where I would say every audiophile falls into this pit when you are only looking at specifications and reasoning. So for example, I was following the description of a product where we had listed all of the benefits of passive crossover versus active crossover, and that created the illusion that passives are so much better. I mean, actives are so much better than passive crossovers, but it was a fragile quagmire of facts, because it looked at everything from one point of view and ignored certain facts which might have made that picture a little bit more diverse than what we received. So that's why my advice to all of you audio mentats is that before you pull your trigger, broaden your field of vision and be prepared at all times to accept new facts, accept new experiences, and change your course when there's time to do a course correction. So here we go, back to audio. So what we want to achieve with our audio gear is we want to recreate an experience. And we want to recreate the experience of being at the event when the music happened, which was then recorded onto that recording that you are reproducing now in your room. And nowadays this gets a little bit beaten up and used as I would say as a bait, and people obsess about making the playback like exactly the same as what the microphone recorded. And that gets, I would say, all of the attention today of engineers. So when you look at the leading engineers who are designing audio equipment today, all of them are fascinated by getting you 100% exact experience what the microphone picked up. And I tell you that this is wrong, because the microphone doesn't pick up the same thing that a human ear picks up. So if we recreate exactly what the microphone picked up, we are not getting that experience that you would have received if you are there and listening to the musicians. So your audio gear needs to have some say to it. It needs to alter the recording to a certain degree, because the recording process is an alteration. And if your audio does the reverse alteration, manages to undo those colorations, those mistakes, that processing that the recording process does, then you can get an experience that is more natural. So today we are just obsessed, not me, but the audio as a field, to get you that experience that a microphone experiences. For me, that's something totally outlier. I do not care how the microphone exactly sounds. Well, I do care. I want to know it, and I'm really glad to hear when efforts are made towards that. But do I want to experience that when I'm listening to music, when I listen to Brahms or Handel? Not at all. I want to hear the musicians and I want to hear Handel. I don't want to hear a specific microphone or the specific mistakes of a recording engineer. And it doesn't mean that I want a system that neglects everything and gives me a fake performance. No. The path that I follow allows me to hear all of these, allows me to hear the mistakes of the microphoning, mic techniques, mistakes of the recording, all of the problems that are in the path, but I don't want these mistakes to be thrown in my face and to trump the music. I want the music to come forth first. I want the experience first, and I want these mistakes to take second place on the back seat. So now let's go here and get closer to our crossover situation. How does this apply to crossovers? Is that we are seeing a process here. So here we are at the source. So let's say we are listening to a Tchaikovsky concert, and then it is an experience, and then it gets recorded, and we play back the recording through a preamp, an amplifier, and through your loudspeakers, and finally your room and your personal preferences. And the source itself, the recording venues, acoustics, how the musicians play, their talent, that the quality of their music instruments, that sets the angle of the projected experience. And if all of your equipment in the path, the recording process, the playback, the preamplifier amp, your loudspeakers, everything does their job 100%, they do not take away from the experience, then you are getting 100% optimal experience. And now let's see if what you hear usually is that your loudspeakers are really critical because if they are not good, everything is bad. But let's take this course of events. So the reality is that the earlier you take a wrong turn, the more of course you are. So if your loudspeakers suck, then your performance curve starts to sag at the very end, and you'll end up still quite high. If your amp sucks, the turn starts sooner. If your preamp sucks, even sooner. There's a problem with the original performance, that it sucked, then no matter how good your stereo is, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So let's look at what sort of compromises you get when you use a passive crossover. So here we are. The blue trajectory shows us when everything is perfect. And now let's see the red trajectory that shows us a more realistic situation, that shows how much of a recording process takes away from the experience. You will get a diminished experience provided everything else is correct. And you see, because this happened at the earlier stage, the returns are the most limited. And now, sadly, our preamplification, the preamplifier has some issues, so you get again diminished returns. And then your amplifier is not perfect, so again you are cutting a little bit. And now the crossover has problems, again lower performance. And now your loudspeaker drivers have their own issues, again you got a cut in performance. So let's say we end up theoretically at a 30% experience level of what you could have achieved if compared to everything being perfect. And now let's see what happens when you have an active crossover. So in the active crossover, what people say is that you do not have the performance dip that the passive crossover does. So that's why your equipment does better. True, the amplifier and driver interface gets better. So you see there's directly an amp and driver connection. There's nothing in between them. So it's just the usual your amp sucks a little bit, your speaker sucks a little bit. So that's not a totally bad course correction. However, what no one is talking about, to achieve active crossover, you need to put your active crossover in front of your amplifier. So whatever changes you are implementing to the sound happen at a much lower level compared to the high level of a passive crossover. So because of that, we are early on experiencing a course correction, and then with the total course corrections, the potential in the end experience actually is lower when you use active crossovers compared to using a passive crossover. Because with the passive, we are, let's go back, we are at the last stage before the drivers. We are tampering with the sound before the drivers. And now with the active crossover, we are tampering at it quite early on. So whatever gets to your amp and your drivers is quite a bit more attenuated. And whatever problems the active crossover introduces, it will be magnified to a much larger degree compared to the passives between amp and driver. But then you would say, like, if you are a fan of active crossovers and you've been playing around with them, you will say that, hey, János, real world audio, you are totally off. Everyone knows that active crossovers just sound so much better than passives. Look at the gains you get with the frequency extension, much better bass, much better highs, much more wider imaging, sound stage, everything sounds more and more. And I would say you are totally right with that. If you are looking at a mid-level or mid-high level implementation, then at that level, the active crossovers quality is so much better than a similar level passive crossover quality that you will get way better results. But when you are looking at a high level passive crossover which has been implemented with using high quality parts, then the tables are turned, because passive components do not affect low level detail as much as active crossover components. Because when you look at it, what is an active crossover? It is an active device, which means it's like a preamp or an amplifier. So it does introduce its own coloration to the sound. And most people do not notice it because they use solid state amplifiers with it. And active crossovers use op-amps, they use Class D chips, whatnot, and that does not really impact the sound of another solid state device, or I would say it impacts to a small degree that you do not notice it. But if you have tube amplifiers, high quality tube gear, then throwing in a solid state device will change the tube sound to solid state sound. So if you are going to active crossover and you are already at that level, that you are past the solid state sound level, which means solid state sound is it excels at delivering you power, volume, and loads of bass, but it is actually quite a bit failing with natural reproduction of violin. So if you want to listen to violin on solid state equipment, it's at least with my hearing and with the hearing of those people who are violinists or play classical music, it's like a huge no. If you throw an active crossover with op-amps into that mix, you are creating this no scenario. However, if you just want to hear, for example, just impactful music like just drums, just saxophone, so music where you do not have harmonic content, where you are not aware of tonality, you are not yet at a listening level where you can make the difference between a drummer who plays loud or a drummer who plays skillfully, then you will much prefer the solid state scenario where you have more solid state in the game, so to give you more mid-bass energy, and the mid-bass energy will define your experience. And I have to emphasize it for all of us that for most of the males, the male brain works on mid-bass. So that's the thing that catches your attention the first. But if you are able to step beyond that, then you will be able to perceive consciously the rest of the spectrum. If you are focused only on instant gratification and just wallowing in mid bass, then you consciously will not pick up what's going on in the mid range. You will not pick up what's really happening in the high frequencies. And on A/B tests, you will pick these gear as your favorites all the times, but when you listen to it at the long term, you will be unsatisfied with it, and you want to tweak it basically in less than a week when you own this equipment. What else? So eventually, that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. And maybe you have different experiences. As I say, we always are the summary of our experiences, and when you listen to my videos, you will have vastly different experiences I have. As my buddy Irvin said many times, is that people have no clue about the level of my amplifiers, what I am listening to. So, and I've been chatting and emailing and talking to some of you, my dear subscribers, and this is what I'm getting from you, is that most of the world is not exposed to high-level sound, and what most of us, what 99% of us believes as the highest possible experience, is actually very far away from the highest possible experience. And all that I can say is just try to broaden your horizon, and when you get a chance to listen to an exceptional system or something that the owner thinks of as exceptional, just get the chance, listen to it, and it might really broaden your horizon. I hope that my videos help you to broaden your horizon. If you have not experienced those things I'm talking about, do not despair. It will take time. It takes time for all of us. I was really lucky that at the very beginning of my audio journey, I managed to experience extremely high level of sound reproduction, which to me was, compared to everything else, even like the top price range category at the time when I listened to it, it sounded like a child's play, like a technology from a broken planet, compared to the experience, which is the top level experience. So just as a reference, what am I babbling about is when you have an engaging experience that is actually give you a better experience than the live event. I can tell you. So reviewers and everyone is going nuts about, wow, this $500,000 system is almost as good as real life. Almost. If it was just twice as much expensive, just more boutique parts, it could be more most like real life, but this is like, oh, so good. No, that's BS squared. If you have a system that has high potential, then provided you have music recordings of extraordinary performers, then it will basically plug you in to what they gave to humanity. And that will be so much beyond listening to a mediocre live performance of some hyped guy or some unknown guy just doing something on his instrument. When that's, for me, that's the benefit of recorded music, is that we have access to really, really fantastic and memorable events that happened, music that was created by people who put their heart and soul into it. Unfortunately, as I was talking to Craig, he commented to me sadly, shared with me sadly, that most of the performances that you go today and you attend to are really mediocre and lifeless and heartless and soulless. And he has musician friends, and he asked him why is that so, and that musician friend of him who plays in an orchestra said that well, that's because the conductor cannot reprimand us, doesn't have power over us anymore. We have a daytime job, we all get paid, we get our job done, and it's not like in the old times when your concert master or your first violinist was unhappy with you, and then next day you found that you have to look for another orchestra to play in. And in the older days, people played music because they felt a conviction, they felt a calling to become a musician, to be a musician. And that's why we started recording them, and we started recording those who were really fantastic, who really gave us something special. But now, by the 21st century, the music turned into an industry when people play music for living, and their performances get edited, they get processed, they get multi-mic'd, and they don't even recognize what the original source was, or the music gets created in the digital realm completely, and we are so much removed from substance, from originality. And when you have a system that can recreate an experience at a very high level, and you play these recordings that have substance, then probably, maybe, the first time in your life you are faced with an experience that just lies outside the realm of pure logic and cold logic. And I can tell you that because my grandfather was such a musician, such a singer, that when he sang, it really stopped the world, and it literally stopped your heart. I remember my heart skipping beats when he was singing, and it took everyone who heard him literally at least a minute until we could find our voice, or find ourselves back in our bodies at a consciousness, at a level strong enough just to move or start clapping or do whatever. And I think this is the purpose of music, that you get transferred into the world of music, connected to it, submersed to it, and that's the highest level of music reproduction. And that's what I'm driving you towards. So thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Bye bye.